Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Mental Corner Podcast, the show where I bring on guests from all different backgrounds to talk all the things mental health. I'm your host, Harry Potvin, and today I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Katie Spotz. Katie is an endurance athlete, a charitable ambassador, an author, and a world record holder. Some of her amazing feats include being the first person to run 138 miles nonstop across Maine in 33 hours, achieving the world record for most consecutive days to run an ultramarathon distance, and a solo row across the Atlantic Ocean. Additionally, she uses these amazing feats to help raise awareness and funds for safe drinking water projects worldwide. Katie was such a blast to have on, and I was so excited to have her come on the show and share her story, so I really want to thank her again for coming on and having this discussion with me. Now, if you couldn't tell from my voice, your boy's feeling a little under the weather. I gotta be honest. This weekend, I got very minimal sleep, and it really took a toll on me. Sleep is no joke, guys. So if you're out there, sleep, you gotta take that stuff seriously. Okay, you can eat as healthy as you want, you can work out as much as you want, but if you don't get enough sleep, it's just going to throw you off track. And that's what it did to me. So, lesson learned. I got my butt kicked again with this little cold, but you know what? Sooner rather than later, we'll be back and kicking it. Now, before we get into the episode today, guys, you know the drill. If you're listening, please like, comment, share, subscribe, give 5 stars if you're on that podcast platform. Share with somebody who might want to hear this episode. It's a really great one, and I can't wait for you to listen. I'll talk to you all very soon. Have a great rest of your day. Peace. We're good to go. Katie, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So my first question for you, I have so many questions, and I was actually very excited to have you on because I have so many questions. But the first one is, what made you realize that you were built and you were made for the endurance athlete life?
So I think it started by figuring out that I wasn't built for the team sports. I was, as a kid, involved in all sorts of sports. Basically every single sport that had a ball and a court or a field I tried, and I was there physically, but mentally I was kind of off on my own and wasn't really focused. And as soon as I started doing endurance, it really lit a fire in me, just because with team sports it's kind of like you win or you lose, or sometimes you tie. And in endurance, it's about witnessing human potential and pushing beyond limits. And I think there's this unknown about endurance, in not only in what the human body can do, but our own limitations. And so it really became exciting to come from not really excelling in that arena, and then finding that this is something that really captured my imagination.
Yeah. Now, did you get started? What kind of endurance sport did you get started in? Was it running?
It was running, and the way I got into running is by avoiding it. I was required to take one more gym class to get my high school diploma, and so I had my goal, which was find the easiest class and put in the least amount of effort. So I found a walking running class, and I was like, all right, I'll walk as slow as I want. All I need is, to tick the box and get on with life. And so I started doing that, putting in that bare minimum effort. And then one day I was just like bored. I mean, it was inside a track. So it takes 8 loops to do 1 mile. So I was just bored, and I felt this sense of, I've never ran 1 mile. Let's see if I can do it. And there was no pressure from coaches or letting down teammates. And so it was a very just organic, like, hey, let's see what can happen. And it wasn't a Nike moment. It wasn't this runner's high or whatever you want to call it. And I mean, my approach, not knowing anything about running, was I'm just going to go as fast as I can, because I don't know how long I'll last, and I just want to get it done with as fast as possible. So it definitely was not a good mile run. I mean, by the end, I was barely running. But a lot of people use the word just when describing a 1 mile run, just 1 mile. And for me, just 1 mile was just enough to make me kind of uncover that I never thought I could do that. And I did. So, what are all the other things that I'm telling myself that I can't do that maybe I can? And so that was just a little crack into a door of what is really possible when you don't label or judge or jump to conclusions about things you know nothing about. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, how does 1 mile translate to the feats of endurance that you've done?
Well, I mean, that's where it starts. You don't run 2 miles until you run one. You don't run 100 miles until you run, 50 or whatever. Like it's a progressive thing. And in endurance, and I think most things in life, there's like in my training, you're never increasing more than 10% a week of your load or intensity. And so if you do those small, incremental, but consistent, um, yeah, gradual increases, that could lead to bigger things. And so it definitely started from that 1 mile. Um, and then after doing that class, I had done a 10-mile run. And that's, I mean, every single mile was celebrated as if it was a marathon. I wasn't like just anything. Everything was like, wow, I ran 3 miles. Look at me. Like I just, that's how excited I was. And so I did do my first marathon probably 6 months after that class. And what really inspired me was all along, I thought it was like, oh, just the Kenyans, just these. I mean, I didn't know anyone who had run a
Right.
marathon, especially I was 16, 17. Um, and so when I did that did that marathon, I saw runners that looked like me and didn't, all shapes and sizes. And I think it's easy for us to say, oh, this is a runner's body, but the runner's body is the body of anyone who has the courage to show up and run and try. And so it really helped me see that this is accessible to everyone. I mean, there's definitely limitations with injuries, but and just interests. Like some people would never want to do that, and there's
Right.
things that I would never want to do too. So that's definitely a valid. But I saw all the other people, and that was enough to inspire me. I mean, just seeing like 60 or 70, like all ages and all shapes and sizes, and it was just really exciting to be a part of that community.
Yeah, no, because I was a swimmer before, and there was always that whole quote unquote swimmer's body that you have to meet or else you're not going to do anything. And it's just such a strange way to look at sports. Like, hey, unless you're built like this, which very few people are, you're not going to go anywhere. It's just,
Yeah.
why are we thinking like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's our way of kind of wrapping our heads around things. And I know with swimming, I think I read something about like how they were dissecting Michael Phelps and like, oh, his hands are, and so yeah, I don't know, but it is interesting and I mean, it can be limiting if we believe that it's not accessible to different bodies. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, I looked up to Michael Phelps and I was like, I want to be just like him. I like that was possible. Like he's not a freak of nature. Yeah, no, yeah, the whole limiting beliefs based on your physical is such a big with athletes that talk to me and reach out to me. It's such a big thing. They go like I've heard people go like, well, I'm not 6 feet, so I can't sprint. I'm like, what? Are you even gonna try?
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
strange.
Yeah, I mean, I just yesterday I was talking about fitness to someone and they're like saying that they couldn't run a marathon or do something like that. And I'm like, "Well, have you tried?" And she's like, "No." I'm like, "Well, you kind of have to, no one runs marathons without trying first. So you actually don't know if you can."
Right.
That's
Yeah,
the
exactly.
answer. So,
Oh man. Now, what was your first endurance feat? Like the one of the big ones.
the So immediately after my first marathon, I was looking to switch up like sports and do a different endurance sport. And so I signed up for a 3,300-mile bike ride from Seattle to DC, so all the way across the United States. Didn't own a bicycle. I learned how to ride as a kid. I did have a bike uh, in college, but it didn't. I got stolen, so I definitely needed to buy the bike. And that was one as a charity event, so it was for the American Lung Association with about 40 other cyclists, and we generally rode about 80 miles a day, had some off days, and camping out, and sometimes staying at colleges, and yeah, just very outside, eat, sleep, bike, pretty much for the whole summer.
Man, how do you even get into, like, how do you mentally train for an event like that?
Um, that is a good question. I think that the biggest challenge that I really had to think about, how can I take care of my mind, not just my body, was the rowing adventure. So rowing for what was 70 days alone, no follow boat, no human interaction for 2.5 months. And the longest I had ever spent is alone is probably like, yeah, maybe 48 hours if I don't go out on a weekend, but that's quite the jump. So I did work with a sports psychologist for that one, and we kind of broke down what's the worst that can happen, what's the best, what's the most likely, and really thinking through kind of like contingencies. And he even monitored my mood during it, because I don't know, he just kind of keeping, just even knowing that he was keeping tabs on me was reassuring, and felt supported. And so I did that. I worked with a sports psychologist, and then I had done really extensive meditation retreats. Those were a big part of my mental training. So these retreats would be 10 days long, no reading, no writing, no eye contact, no any form of communication. And so that was really impactful. And it may seem like, okay, so rowing all day and meditating all day, how do those two equate? But when you're meditating, you're very much aware of your own internal state. And doing these adventures, it's not necessarily, 30-foot waves or sharks or whatever I'm experiencing. It's my internal reaction to it. So meditation was a really great tool for me to know and really practice not reacting to highs and lows and emotions, and knowing and having that resting spot of knowing that you can just be aware and not react. And that's, I mean, if you're doing any kind of athletic thing, it's definitely an internal battle. And I think endurance is probably even more so, because you're not kind of distracted by competition. You're really focused on you versus you. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. So with the rowing thing, this is what I'm so fascinated about, because you hear about the ocean and you think it's this big scary place that no one can ever go, and then here you are rowing it by yourself. So when you're sitting at home, well, I don't know what you were doing at the time, but you finally decide on, I'm going to row across the ocean, and you hear that you're going to be the first, or the youngest, sorry, and the first American, if I believe, to do it. What's going through your head? Like, is there, like, how do you silence the doubt of, well, no one's done it before, so why would you ever make it?
Oh gosh, I mean, doubt was all over. I One of the um, situations I got myself in before. So interesting fact: there are about 3,000 shipwrecks in Lake Erie. That's the highest concentration of shipwrecks in the world, and
Cool.
that is where I had the opportunity to train for the Atlantic.
Mm.
So I got in a really bad accident because it's very shallow. And when things and weather changes, it changes very quickly. And so this was 4 or 5 months before the journey was going to begin. And I just, yeah, there was like a hole in the side. I was devastated. And I just remember people were taking pictures of me and the boat, and they're like, if you can't row Lake Erie, why do you think you can row the Atlantic? I'm like, I don't know, but I still am gonna try. So yeah, of course, and there is some logic to that. In the ocean, you don't have anything to hit. Being on a lake is more dangerous in some ways because you know, the biggest danger is hitting something, and in the middle of the ocean, you're not near things to hit. So um, in rowing oceans, the most dangerous part is usually the beginning, and for that very reason, there's land to hit and boats to hit, or hit you. So I definitely I definitely felt like I'm not the person who's supposed to be doing this. This is for other people. I am not the qualified one. However, I, even though I may not have had the ability, I had the availability, and I think sometimes that's more important. If you might not be the best person for this thing, but if you're available and open to it, and so I very much believe that that was a call on much bigger than myself, especially because how illogical it was. And I think before I even started planning that journey, I was very aware that I'm doing something that I might not live through. And that psychologically did a lot, you know, like
Right.
going to the airport and seeing my parents and saying goodbye. We all knew that it might be the last time we'd see each other. So it was a heavy, definitely a heavy decision, but I feel like my options, I mean, sometimes in life where we think there's an easy option. The easy option would be just don't do that. Just don't row the Atlantic. That's the easy option. But I think that would have been the hard option because you can't outrun your fears. You're either running from that fear of failure, or there's that fear of regret. And I know that if I didn't do that journey, I would have regretted it. I would have been you know, at the end of my life thinking, what if, and I should have, and what it could have been. And, you know, I waste, you know, just that kind of, and that to me, a lifetime of regret seemed like a heavier burden. And so yeah, I've definitely accepted that and made that choice that I'd rather have the struggle of doing hard things and the reward that can come from that, rather than the struggle of what if and if only. And I think anytime you make a choice in life, it can become a habit. And I didn't want to habitually ignore callings. And I think dreams and goals and callings are really gifts. And it became a matter of like honoring and stewarding a gift. And so that is really, that's it. I mean, when I found out about the water crisis, that's around the same time I found out about the row. And I also believe that if you have a strong enough why, you can figure out how. Like how to do things is not as important as why, if you have a strong purpose, a vision. And so as soon as I learned about the water crisis, I was angry because I was like, what? This
Mm-hmm.
should not happen. Why are people, no, that's wrong. So knowing that endurance can be a platform for other people, it just, I mean, my momentary short-term struggle is definitely worth this lifetime of positive impact for other people. So that definitely is something that for me helps me dig deeper than if it was just for my own glory or personal satisfaction. But you know, that's great too if you do things you love doing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, the what ifs will kill you. Honestly, they'll corrode you over time.
Oh gosh, I mean, it just snowballs. You just, if you start doing it, when does it end? I mean, anything can become habit. And so
Yeah,
I didn't want to make that a habit and have a midlife or quarter life crisis where I'm like, all those things I wanted to do, let's bring them all back. Oh no,
Yeah.
it's too late. Okay, let's feel depressed about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Let me try to row the ocean at 60. just
I'm,
just
I mean, so it is gaining a little more popularity since that I did it. Um, because it's a official race. So the people doing it do it from like an island to an island, so it is a little bit easier, as if there's an easy way. But you're in the trade winds and currents. So, but for me, I would have never wanted to do it as part of a race because I think when you're in a situation where survival is so important, you don't want to get in race mode because like if you do race mode at a marathon, there's people to make sure that if you fall over it, there will be help. But if you're in race mode in an ocean, you forget something or you let that competition override survival. I think it's a dangerous place to be. So I was not looking to compete in the ocean.
yeah, no, definitely not. Now with the whole rowing thing, um what was my question? Yeah, so did you how do you pack for that? Like you packed food obviously and water. Like how does one pack heavy enough to last the 70 days but light enough where you don't sink?
Yeah, so my boat was 400 pounds. Once it was loaded, it was about 1,000.
Wow.
And I definitely didn't have like MREs because that had liquid in it. So my meals were all the dehydrated, like camping foods. And I would have a desalinator to convert the salt water into drinking water. I also had a backup handheld, and then I had ballast water, so that would help if I flipped. It would help my boat flip right back over. So I had water through the desalinator, and everything was powered by the sun with my solar panels. Very sunny out there, barely had clouds or rain, so that wasn't an issue. And then food, brought a lot of chocolate bars, brought a lot of high calorie things, and then mainly it was the dehydrated meals, and I had a sprouting kit for some fresh stuff. And yeah, when I landed, they had a bunch of watermelon there, and I was like, how did you know that's what I wanted? And they're like, you wrote about it like every other day. I was like, oh.
Just craving it, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, watermelon is very good in warm weather and doing athletic stuff. So
Man, yeah, I bet. So you didn't experience any storms out there?
I did have 30-foot waves near the end. So it wasn't a storm, it was just the area. It's near the continental shelf. So it's where there's a shift, kind of like in Finding Nemo and the drop off.
Mm,
And so it's known to be rough there. And so if the winds are in a certain way, then the waves will just spike. And so I did have that. Um, but I will say, from being, I mean, I started swimming and as soon as I could, and I would always be at that wave pool all the way up to the front, um, because I just love it and I love the energy of big waves. And so I had enough trust in my boat at that point. It also was very boring seeing 3 to 5 foot waves all the time. So to me, I was like, we get to see the full capabilities of the boat. I mean, I'm in an ocean rowboat to handle ocean, uh, you know, currents and everything. So I was pretty excited to have that. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm always aware that you never are too comfortable in the ocean. You always know no one's safe. Like there's always that danger. So I was doing the things to stay safe, but I was also like, wow, this is cool. Yeah.
yeah, right. Yeah. And it's like, where are the waves? I was expecting them. Now, when you get so you've left, when you get halfway, how do you mentally keep going? Because how long is it from South America to Africa?
So 3,000 miles. it could have been 2,500 because I was intending to land in French Guiana.
Mm-hmm.
And I went 2 countries west because the waves were so big that I couldn't land precisely. And so I would have needed a boat to tow me in. And for me, I was not interested in getting a tow. I mean, I wanted it to be unassisted, and I'm very stubborn about like, no, if they tow me in 1 mile, it's not legit. And so I ended up going 2 countries west. So yeah, it ended up being 3,000 miles. And at the halfway points, usually when I do endurance challenges, when I reach the halfway point, it's like this sense of relief of like, oh, now I'm closer to the end. And oh, I know what it takes to do. I just have to do that again. And I reached the halfway point, and suddenly the ocean felt like 10 times bigger. And it was like, I thought I had everything and gave it all, and I'm only halfway. I can't imagine doing that again. It had the opposite effect of what it usually did. And so I definitely broke down and was crying and just so overwhelmed, and even thinking like, should I ask for, should I quit? Should I do this? And I was kind of like, by the time they get out here, it could take 2 days. I'll probably forget about it. Like I was aware that my emotional state was the highs and the lows, that I knew that by the time they came, I'd probably change my mind anyway. So
Right.
I think what's beautiful about doing these challenges is sometimes the only thing feelings require is the ability to be felt and not bottled up, and releasing that was enough to, I don't know, like I had a satellite phone, so one of my friends that I called during that low moment was another ocean rower. And hard things do feel hard, and it's not something you take personally, and you understand that, that's 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 the nature of it. I mean, there is something to say about hardships that you put on yourself, the ones you choose. So you can also look at it like, I mean, it's sometimes things are harder when they're placed on you without your choice. And so I knew that was something I chose. I knew that my emotions would change. I knew that sometimes feelings just need to be felt and released. And I stopped looking at it as 3,000 miles. And I said, okay, 1 mile, 3,000 times. Like I can only do 1 mile. That is all. And so the whole enormity disappeared. And I just said, if I just focus on 1 mile, the 3,000 will take care of itself. And I became more intentional about reward systems, and like, okay, I get to listen to Comedy Central if I do this, and doing whatever I needed to do to motivate myself. And I mean, yeah, it really wasn't that hard to motivate myself sometimes, because there's nothing else to do but
Right.
row. Like, I'm not gonna like go to my friend's house. I'm not gonna have movie night. I mean, there's nothing else to do. So I definitely, knew that I'd rather be rowing than staring at a wall. So
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Now, you said you had a phone. Did it have like it had data?
it was a satellite phone. Didn't always work. Was
Hmm.
$1.50 a minute, so I rarely
Uh,
used it at all.
right.
I couldn't do internet, but I could have ability to do email through it. So that's how I was able to do some blogging and tweets at sea.
Right. Now with all of that time, 70 days spent, cuz in society now, we're super distracted all the time. If we're bored, we can just pull up Instagram or YouTube or whatever, and I'm guilty of it all the time. But when you're at sea and you don't have that data, like how do you obviously get bored, but how do you kind of get back into the mindset of okay, 1 mile at a time?
Um, like, I guess just help me understand. So the mindset of not being so attached to, like, because we're so connected, like losing that connection
Yeah.
to, oh, I never liked that stuff anyways. Like, I mean, I broke up with social media many times. I never really liked that kind of thing, and so I I enjoy that space. I think there's a freedom to it that it's just you in the moment and not needing to think about dressing it up or presenting it. It's I don't know, it's very pure. So I loved that. And I mean, I value my relationships, and so I did was intentional about keeping in touch with emails to people that, and I definitely valued that this was an opportunity to invite schools in, and I saw that, you know, by sharing and by blogging and doing those things, inevitably it supported the cause. But personally, um, I would prefer to have, I guess, more privacy anyways. So
Right. Fair.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, yeah. There are some people out there who probably need a 70-day cleanse from social media. Honestly, some people in my life, a little shrug if they're listening, but yeah.
Oh,
Um. So there was one of the biggest questions I had for you, and it's not even a mental health question. It's because I'm such an animal nerd, and I was listening to your episode with Rogan, and you mentioned like bioluminescent creatures at night. I was
yes.
wondering if you could dive into that a little bit because that's just right up. I'm so fascinated.
Oh, okay. So I just went to Puerto Rico, and there's 6 spots in the world that I guess are the best. And I actually just went on a kayaking tour this month to see it. So 3 of the 6 spots are there, and one of them is the best in the world. So I was just talking to my friend because I'm going back for a speaking event, and so I'm going to try to see the best in the world. But it is amazing. I mean, I didn't even research what I would see, and so I was aware that people who do spend time on the ocean can hallucinate. So I was like, oh no, it happened, it's happening, I'm hallucinating. And I'm like, is this real? And I almost didn't want to ask people because I was like, ah. So bioluminescence is a glowing plankton that's activated by movement. So you could see it if a fish is swimming. You could see it along my boat with the water lapping. You could see it every time I put my oar, all my oar strokes. You could see it if I moved my hand in the water. And so it looks kind of like glitter in the water. Sometimes you could see it as on the waves, like when on the crests of them. So it's just super magical. And the fact that I could see, I mean, where else can you see a clear view of the sunrise and sunsets and shooting stars? And so that was definitely one of the highlights, is seeing that, and um, having all that nature and dolphins and sea turtles, and yeah, the phosphorescence was pretty rad.
Man, all I can picture is the Life of Pi scene. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but have
I
you seen?
I
Yeah,
have. It's been a few years, but
it's they're like it's the main guy and the tiger on the boat, and then all the blue algae is everywhere, and it's just the most beautiful scene in the planet. So that's all I can think about. That's so you to dolphins and sea turtles as well. Then did you see any sharks? That seems like a stupid
oh,
question, but
yes, yes. So I mean, this is what I told myself: if I don't bother it, it won't bother me, kind of thing.
hmm
Um, but I mean, I will admit that I do enjoy, like, yeah, nothing, no bad interactions. They did their thing, I did my thing, it was fine. Um, but yeah, I have done um, scuba diving, and there were like reef sharks. So I've done dives with sharks, and then in South Africa, there's one of the cage ones that I did, and so yeah, I guess it's fair to say that I'm on a like a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, and so like when things like that are around, I'm like, ooh, like not like jump in the water, ooh, be stupid, but like, ooh, I don't know.
yeah, right. No, yeah, that's awesome. So when you get to the other end, you're finally done. What happens then? Like how I don't even know
Well,
how to word this question. Like, what did you do after? Did you just kind of take some time off, or did you just get into the next thing?
well, I had to learn how to walk, so that took a little bit of time.
Right.
I had to learn how to make decisions again, because I didn't make decisions for months. Like I knew what I was going to eat, what I was going to listen to, what I was going to wear, what I was going to do, where I was going to go,
Mm.
all decided. Then I have to pick out my toothpaste, and I'm like, whoa, there's so many options. What am I doing? What do I want? And so it was much harder for me to adjust to being back on land. And I mean, you can't go from any more extreme than being alone and then being doing like national media and all these uh really great opportunities for the cause. And so I think it did take a toll on me. I mean, all the things take a toll. So that was harder for me to adjust to. Just even being, I never had a problem with seasickness, but I felt disoriented being back on land, and it was harder to like eat and weird things like that. But I was doing AmeriCorps the year before the row, and then I started working for another water company in Cleveland. So um, and then squeezing in like speaking when I could. And then 6 months after, I was planning the next event, which was another biking one. So um but yeah, it was a lot. It was definitely a lot of a whirlwind after that. And um so yeah.
Nice. Now, how long did it take you in that whirlwind to kind of finally get readjusted to everything?
um so I would say probably a few years,
Mm.
because I was kind of focused on the next adventure. And yeah, yeah, probably. So my friend introduced me to faith, and that was kind of where the shift happened, where before, the way my relationship was with endurance is I put a lot of my identity and my worth in it, and it's very hard to enjoy something when you think your worth depends on it. And it it's kind of lost the joy for me. I felt like I needed to do it, and I needed to do more. And you can always get caught up in the not enough, always more. And that's where I ended up. And so spiritually, I was just very depleted. And so I was um, connected with a friend through some other charity work that we both worked at or for. And so when she introduced me to faith and kind of shared what it's done in her life, I got very interested. Kind of the same curiosity when I learned about ocean rowing or when I learned about the water crisis. And so now I think it's only after kind of establishing a faith life that I've been able to go back to it. I don't think I would be able to have a healthy relationship with endurance if I didn't have faith as a part of my life. Yeah, because now it's like there's a foundation and an identity that isn't dependent on what I do or don't do. So yeah, there's definitely a lot more freedom to that,
Mm.
if that makes sense.
No, yeah, it definitely does. No, I love that. Yeah, that's because sometimes the things you do can consume you so hard if you just put everything you have into. Well, I mean, you should put everything you have into it, but like you said, you should. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. You know what? You said it perfectly. It's okay. With the water crisis, what got you started in that initiative, and then what have you been doing since then? Um,
Yeah, so I was living in Australia for college, and I was living in Melbourne, and they had a 10-year drought, and it was at the height of it. And every major headline was about the water crisis. And then at that time, I was studying environmental science, and one of my professors mentioned just very casually that, oh, yeah, there's wars in these countries over water. And that's kind of where our future's heading. And I was just so shocked that we have airplanes, we have cell phones, we have all the things, and yet it was at that point a billion people. And I just felt like very ignorant, just the fact that, at that time it was 1 in 6 people, and I didn't even know that 1 in 6, that's like, how can I not know about these 1 in 6 people? Like, I thought I met enough people. And so, yeah, it was very shocking at first, because what can you do without clean water? Not a whole lot. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
can't even go to school because you're collecting water. I mean, it's just mind blown. And so what encouraged me about the water crisis is, sometimes with causes and charities, you support it, but you never really know if it's going to, sometimes it's research, sometimes it's finding solutions that we don't even know. And with water, there's proven solutions. And how else can you impact someone on $30? $30 can, if it's like a rainwater harvesting, which is the cheaper kinds of projects, because you don't need to dig wells, and it's very, like, yeah, it's very efficient if
Mm-hmm.
it's accessible, if there's a rainy season. So, like, how else can you make that big of an impact in someone's life if $30 to $50 can give one person access to clean water for life? And if you basically care about anything, water's related to it. If you care about kids, kids and their moms are usually the ones who bear the burden of it. Kids are the ones that can't go to school because they're collecting it. So if you care about kids, if you care about health, if you care about environment, if you care about women's issues, I mean, it also, in a logical sense, is like, it's the first step out of a life of poverty. So to me, it seems like the no-brainer. We have solutions, and I just think it's a solvable problem. And so, since then, 40,000 people have gained access to clean water through these adventures. So, 95 projects across 13 countries. And right now, I'm raising funds for a project in Haiti with a skate for water. It's my first
Mm.
inline skating adventure. There's been a bike, a row, a swim,
Right.
a few runs. And I also just launched adventure grants. So it's basically to support other people who might want to do a ride for water, or a run, or a swim for water, do their own event. And it would just help offset some of their costs of, whether it's shoes or maybe a flight or a race fee, to, support others in their desire to want to give back through sport. And so it would be in hopes and anticipation that they would, help support the cause by, inviting others to get involved and support it. So, and then, yeah, there's always more adventures to have in life, but the skate and the adventure grant are the two areas that, I'm pretty excited about. So,
Yeah. It was how far is the skate?
119 miles. So, we're doing it over 4 days, my friend and I, and we're doing about, ultramarathon, or around 30 miles a day.
Mm.
30. Yeah.
On a skateboard or on rolling blades,
So
rollerblades?
they're inline skates. So, Rollerblade is one of the partners for it. So they're like we're doing the 3-wheel skates that are, a little faster
Yeah,
than 4. So,
right on. That is so cool. Well, where can people find all of that stuff, like for the clean water projects you do and
yeah.
the feats you do and everything?
Yeah, so my website is Katie Spotz, KATIESPOTZ.com, and there is a donate button there. Or for this campaign that is happening in a couple weeks, it's just skate for water, number 4 water.com.
Amazing. And so my very last question for you, Katie, if there's anyone out there listening who is kind of, getting sucked into those limiting beliefs for anything they're doing right now. They're thinking, "Oh, I want to do this, but I shouldn't or I can't without even trying. Like we've mentioned before, if you were in a room with them, what would you want to tell them to kind of push them towards that?
Yeah, I think there the proof of the possibilities is there. If whoever you are, whatever you're going through, someone else has gone through it and gotten to the other side. So why not you? Why why couldn't you? Why? And so yeah, that would be my biggest encouragement, is that it is possible to get to the other side, because we whatever you're going through, you're not the only one, and someone else has learned how to get to the other side.
I love it. Katie, thank you so much for joining me this episode. I've had a blast.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you.
And to all my listeners, I will see you guys next time.